So, here's a question. When you think a political system isn't working, do you just try to fix it around the edges, or do you rip the whole thing up and start from scratch? Today, we're going to look at a pretty radical proposal for Bangladesh that argues for exactly that, a completely new blueprint for its government, one that could, well, change just about everything. Okay, so what are we talking about here? At the center of it all is this initiative called DAFA 21. And their mission? Wow, it's pretty bold. They want to bring back a presidential government and, to use their own words, end family dynasty. Right away, that tells you we're talking about a huge, dramatic shift. All right, so here's our game plan for breaking this down. First, we'll get into what the proposal actually is. Then, we'll get into the big why they think this change is so necessary. After that, we'll check out the presidential system they're suggesting in a really unique idea for Parliament. And finally, we'll zoom out to really understand what a reform like this would mean. So, what's the big idea here? What's the main change they're pushing for? And look, we're not just talking about some minor adjustment or a little policy change. No. This is a full-on, top-to-bottom overhaul of the entire system of government. And there it is in a nutshell. The core idea is to move away from the current parliamentary model and bring in a presidential system, kind of like the one in the United States. And that's probably because it's a classic example of what they're after, a clear separation of powers and a strong executive. This single change is really the foundation for everything else we're going to talk about. Okay, so before you can really appreciate a solution, you've got to understand the problem it's trying to fix, right? So why are they calling for such a massive change? Let's dive into the criticism they have of the way things are now. Wow, okay, they are not pulling any punches here. This quote from the source material is powerful, shackled in a fascist chain. They're basically saying that the current UK-style parliamentary system hasn't brought democracy at all. Instead, they argue it's led to something much, much more authoritarian. And a huge part of their arguments comes down to this one word, Paribartantra. It basically translates to dynasty rule. The idea here is that the current system allows political power to just get stuck within the same families, getting passed down from one generation to the next, which they say shuts the door on any new leadership. So how do you break that cycle? Well, the proposal has a two-part plan, and it's pretty straightforward. First, no president can serve more than 2 terms. Simple enough. But then, and this is the real kicker, nobody else from that president's family can ever hold that top job again. It's a clear attempt to put a stop to that cycle of Paribartantra. Okay, so we've heard the problem. Now let's look at the solution. What does this proposed presidential system actually do to fix all the issues we just talked about? You can really see the contrast here. On one side, you have their critique of the current system. They say it's unstable, power is all in one spot, and it leads to these dynasties. And on the other side, you've got their proposed fix, a system built for stability, with checks and balances, and a leader who is chosen by everybody. All right, let's break down their solution, pillar by pillar. First up, stability. You know how in a parliamentary system, a government can just fall apart with a no-confidence vote? Well, this proposal says, let's get rid of that. A president gets a fixed term, and that's that. The idea is that it allows for consistent, long-term planning for the country. Pillar number 2 is a classic, you've probably heard of it, separation of powers. You split the government into 3 branches: the folks who make the laws, the folks who enforce the laws, and the folks who judge the laws. They all keep an eye on each other, and it's all about making sure no one person or group gets way too powerful. Next up, Pillar 3, a direct mandate from the people. So instead of having politicians pick the leader, the idea here is that everyone gets a vote. Every single citizen helps choose the president directly. They argue this gives the leader a real, powerful mandate to act for the whole nation, not just for one political party. And the last pillar, this one's all about getting the best people for the job. Under this proposed system, the president wouldn't be stuck choosing their cabinet ministers only from other politicians. They could go out and find the top experts in their fields, the best economists, the best scientists, the best engineer, and put them in charge. The priority becomes competence, not just political connections. But hang on. This isn't just about the president, and this is where, for me, the proposal gets really, really interesting. They have this whole new vision for what Parliament itself should look like, and it's all about making sure certain groups, some you might not expect, always have a seat at the table. And the magic number here? It's 60. So, check this out. The proposal is to reserve these 60 seats. 10 of them would go to minority ethnic groups, 20 would be set aside for women. Okay, so far so good. But then, Look at this. 10 seats reserved for students, giving young people a direct voice, and 20 more for a group called the Wise, which they define as experts and virtuous people. Can you imagine that? A parliament that guarantees seats for its best minds and its future leaders? That's a very different way of thinking about representation. Okay, so let's put all these pieces together. You've got a new presidency, you've got strict rules to stop dynasties, and you've got this totally redesigned parliament. So what's the big picture here? What does all this actually mean? In the end, what we're looking at isn't just a fresh coat of paint. The DAFA 21 proposal is a call to tear the whole house down to the studs and rebuild it from the ground up. Their argument is basically, the foundation is cracked, so just fixing the windows won't work. We need a whole new blueprint. And all this leaves us with a really big question. And it's not just for Bangladesh, it's for any country, really. When you're trying to design a government from scratch, how do you find that perfect sweet spot? How do you balance the need for a strong, stable system that can actually get things done with making sure that every group, every person, every voice feels like they're truly represented? That's the fundamental challenge, isn't it? And it's right at the heart of what it means to build a democracy.